Okay, we'll get started in just a few minutes. This is the Steve Mazikane podcast. It is 4:01. In about 2 minutes, or in about a minute, we'll get going. I hope everyone had a great weekend. We did have technical issues on Friday, so we didn't go live. And yesterday was a holiday, so we didn't do that. But good to be back. And it's just good to be back. I hope everyone had enjoyed their holiday yesterday. And we have just a huge week. It doesn't really matter what political party you are. Inauguration is a big deal. The transfer of power is as American as it gets, and this concept of this process being upended, like we've seen the last couple weeks, and the claims of false elections, all that stuff, just comes to an end tomorrow. There's a new start. Now, certainly Pelosi has not sent the articles of impeachment over to the Senate yet, so we don't know when that trial will take place. It's likely going to happen later this week or next week. So that may linger on some of these news stories when we kind of, Biden more than likely wants a change of direction, but we're not going to get there. So in any event, before we get into politics and news and all that good stuff, we'll talk about a tax credit proposed by Sean Scanlon this afternoon. He had a little press conference on camera, a child tax credit, which will bring people about $1,800 over the next couple of years if you have kids. That could be helpful for many. Granted, we haven't seen a plan how it's going to be paid for yet, so that other shoe will drop at some point. But I do kind of applaud him for starting with the benefits first. So often the Democrats have had a terrible messaging plan when it comes to putting out tax increases or maybe a tax increase, but it's also a redistribution of help the lower classes. And that's kind of a theme as we look at the stimulus package. It's a theme as we look at what the immigration package Biden is putting forward. As we looked at the $15 minimum wage nationally, are you helping the lower classes overall? So we'll talk about that in a second. On a very, very different note, the last few days I've been eating at a ton of different restaurants. I want to talk about some of those restaurants now, but today I had lunch at Cast Iron Chef, and I'll tell you something. Now, there's a lot of high-end restaurants, right? The Shell and Bones of the world, and the Cast Iron Chefs, and I don't know if we call Adriana's kind of in that category. I don't know if Brantford really has a really, really high-end restaurant. Rosso Vino, I don't know if it's quite at that level from a perception standpoint. Rosso Vino is kind of like a neighborhoody place. But we do have Le Petit Cafe, which is a higher-end place, no question. But I went to Cast Iron Chef last Sunday for brunch. And and I'm sorry to hide all the people saying hi. David White, you're right. I'm watching Netflix on the screen. About 10 minutes ago, I said to myself, looking at the chart, I should buy Netflix before earnings. And it's $500 a share. It was 501 earlier today. It is now 534. Would have been a really nice 6-7% return after hours, but I did not do it. And that's how that works. In any event, yes, and thank you very much. I'm glad to be on. I see you already put up the Valentine's Day tree. Yes, that's the Valentine's Day tree. If people have little hearts they want to send them over, and we'll throw those up on the tree. Yeah, I missed this completely. Literally 10 minutes ago, I said, look, buy Netflix before, and I did not do it. It's up 7.35%. In any event, I went last Sunday to grab brunch. Brunch at Cast Iron. I saw the menu and I thought it was $45 a person, and there were all these items on the menu. And I thought you went there and you chose what you wanted. I go there, it's $45, and if you want to replace the rigatoni in it with steak and eggs, it goes to $55. Okay, but if you're not drinking, and I'm not a big drinker, it drops from $45 to $30. So $30 a person if you're not drinking at brunch. I thought we were going to choose from the menu. It's everything on the menu. They bring all these courses from cinnamon buns to bananas Foster to frittata to rigatoni with brajol and meatballs. This is the best brunch I've ever been to. And so I said, oh my God, I went back on Friday for lunch, and they do these cast iron pizzas. They make the pizza in this cast iron pan. It's an unbelievably unique flavor. It's phenomenal. One was overburnt, but one was phenomenal. And so I talked to the chef, and I went back today. Now, if you don't know Cast Irons in New Haven, where Carmen Anthony's was, it's been open for about 3 years. It's really a steak place, but they've been doing phenomenal menus. But they're opening in Milford, in the Milford Mall, which I don't know if I would do. That's kind of tough. But in the Milford Mall, they're not going to be a steak restaurant. They're going to be other things. So today, he invited me down to try out some of the new items on the menu. If you follow me on Facebook, you can. If not, you can just look on it now. We took some video of a clam chowder pizza, 18 whole clams on the pizza. Holy God. I'm telling you, holy God. It's not on the menu now. He said if you want to go in and order it, he'll make it for you, but not at a busy time. So try lunch during the week. Oh, my God. And then he had tacos. And the tacos are made basically out of fried dough, small fried dough. Had broccoli rabe and shaved bruschetta. Not bruschetta, shaved, what do you call it? The pork. I wrote this. Hold on, I gotta check it on my page. I just posted this. It's salty. Russell Vino has it as a thing every. It was broccoli rabe and porchetta. I'm sorry. On top of it, I'm telling you something. One of those moments where you take a bite of something and you're like, "Holy God!" Like I've never would. Netflix is now up 8%. So I totally missed the boat on that. It's just stupid. Whatever. In any event, spectacular. Now, he won't make this for you at busy times. Don't go during at night or on the weekends, but it will be on the menu in Milford. That's not opening till March, but I just give them credit. You know, there's so many restaurants struggling right now. We've had this conversation on here, and just because you're struggling and saying support restaurants, there's still an obligation for restaurants to do things to be competitive, even in tough times. In fact, more so in tough times. And whether it's pricing, but it's not always pricing, which have really good food. You know, you're seeing something here. The places that have really good food are surviving. They may not be thriving, but they're surviving. Ask yourself before you yell at marketing or go crazy on social media, is my food good? Do people have really good meals here? You know, the people are going to pay for an experience. And I will tell you this, it is worth every penny going to Cast Iron. Now, everybody knows my favorite places. For breakfast, I'm in Hornets Nest every day. Thank you to John. I spent last week at the Parthenon. The Hornets Nest was closed, but the Parthenon was fine. I like Rosso Vino a lot. I ate last week at Pasta Cozy. I'm eating out way too much. I really am. I did try Doma. Doma's okay. One pizza was very, very good. I'd never had a pizza. They had a pepperoni pizza they add honey to, which was a really, really nice kick. It was good. I went for lunch. I haven't seen the whole dinner menu. Haven't tried that yet. I will do so in the future, and I'll let you know. But we have a lot of good restaurants, and I am eating out way too much. I think I have to make sure I get back on the treadmill really, really soon. That said, Cast Iron, oh my God. Oh my God. Like one of those, I bit into that taco and said to myself, holy shit. That was a serious, serious bite, serious food. And so the chef came out, Attilio comes out, and, you know, sometimes I'm lost in conversation. I'm talking politics, and I get into the weeds of politics, and people are like, what are you talking about? I was like dumbfounded listening to this guy talk about food. He was talking about the way it's prepared and what they go after, all of those things. And it was a master talking about his craft. This guy cares. He worries about it. I mean, he works on this stuff. To make the pizza, it took him 1.5 years to perfect the way the crust cooks in a cast iron pan. I'm telling you, try this place out. It is spectacular. Just an amazing experience. Doma, yeah, I tried last week. So this is what's good about Jared at home. Jared at home, I posted a picture of something. I don't know what I posted of. And Jared at home sent an email saying, try Orlando's as well. I haven't gone yet. I promised him I would. By the way, Jared does a lot of things for the community, and he really sticks up for the restaurant community. I don't go to home a lot, trying to not eat these heavier mac. If I go there, I'm going to get that buffalo mac and cheese, which is freaking amazing. But I really don't want to eat the buffalo mac and cheese for reasons that have nothing to do with taste. But really good guy. A lot of appreciation for Jared. Hornets Nest, yes. Cast Iron is the former Carmen Anthony's in New Haven. Just look it up online. Just spectacular. And couldn't recommend it more. The first time I went, they opened 3 years ago, and they have this porterhouse for two. And I think it was like $110 for porter. It was, and so we got some appetizers thinking, all right, we get appetizers, try some steak, take some home. They served this porterhouse for, it's the biggest thing you've ever had. And it's over mashed potatoes and vegetables over. It's this whole meal for $110, which really at $50 a person, $55 a person for a nice dinner out is not that high. Ended up taking like 90% of it home. Just spectacular. That brunch we went to, more food came home than we ate there. So I cannot recommend that place enough. I will go back. And this is a good example of a restaurant that has said, yes, it's a pandemic. Yes, it's hard. Let's stay ahead of the curve. Let's keep upping our game. Let's have really high quality food and people will come. And you know what? It's happened. So for a lot of these restaurants, take that hint. Up your game. People want to support restaurants. They're spending a fortune on restaurants. And we'll talk about a second, Bob Duff, who is the Senate leader for the Democrats, posted this hugely idiotic post taking credit for the surplus that the state is seeing in sales tax revenues. The sales tax revenue surplus is coming from the federal government, who pumped in billions of dollars into the economy. That's where it's coming from. People had money. They were pumping in money. People were home, so they were spending more. And then unemployment, you were pouring money in. So this idiot taking credit for it is nonsense. That said, that's what's happening. People are spending money on small businesses, and yes, Amazon, but also restaurants, what have you. It is up to a restaurant owner to also make sure that you are taking the steps to be competitive, to be, everybody's fighting. Up your game, have better food, get fresher ingredients, blow people away by the food. They'll come back over and over and over again. I've talked about this with Hornet's Nest. Why is Hornet's Nest successful? It's consistently good. The other day, now Hornet's Nest closed down last week. They had one person in the back had COVID. He could have opened on Wednesday. He decided to be careful and took the week off. All the credit in the world. You're back in there today. But part of the food that threw away when they closed was a ton of chicken that they were marinating. Now, how many delis or lunch restaurants do you know marinate their chicken? None. But when you put those extra touches into your menu items and those extra touches into your food, it helps you be competitive. So for those restaurants that are struggling, it's not just, hey, save restaurants. It's, here are the steps we're taking to be competitive, to up our game, to have better food, better ingredients. And you will see those places successfully, consistently succeed and get ahead. So that's the restaurant update. And now that I mentioned the restaurants that I've been going to, I do have to admit that I'm going to way too many restaurants, and I need to not go to as many and get back to the gym, which I'll likely do right after this podcast. Okay, we are on to what is the last single day. Holy God, Netflix, up 10.25%. Wow, did I miss that? Literally 10 minutes before I came on, I said, buy some Netflix, even if you had bought 20 shares. Wow, that figures. In any event, let's talk about the last day of the Trump administration and whether you fall into that category of believing his stuff, that it was a fake election, whatever it is. Tomorrow he will not be there and Joe Biden will be. And last week he gave us the details of a stimulus package, which probably won't pass at the numbers he's putting it forward, 1.9 trillion. But we did hear from some Republicans that there's support for it. We know it'll be at least come up in the Senate now, because the Senate now is controlled by the Democrats. So some version of this will pass. But I do want to talk about the one concern in it that I had. So the $1,400 more, no concern. The raising to 300 to the 400, I'm sorry, no real concern. I may have gone higher, but all right, 400 is probably passable. Extending that to September, okay, might be a bit much, but there are some industries that absolutely are decimated. Like, for example, the entertainment industry is decimated. You're not going to see Broadway opening for months. That's a lot of jobs. It's a lot of people who are in acting, a lot of people who are in movies, all those things are gone. So there are some people that may need that. I'm guessing come August, maybe even sooner, June, there'll be some higher restrictions or hiring people to audit and make sure people are not staying on there where they shouldn't be. That's fine. So a lot of this stuff is fine. More money for states, and we knew that the states and the towns were going to get money in the Democratic plan. That's fine. I have a question about the John. Thank you, and thank you for last week. I was at the Parthenon all last week and got to see John every morning. So thank you. The what was I just saying? The $15 minimum wage. So Connecticut's going to have a $15 minimum wage in 2 years anyway. The problem with a national $15 minimum wage is the significant difference there are between states. And so I want to give you, let's just give this an example. Let's suppose a family of two, roommates, married, and get who to care. Two people live in a house together, share expenses. $15 an hour times 40 times 52 is about $26,000 a year. So two people is a $52,000 minimum income coming into that house. No overtime if they can get 40 hours. Let's look up on, and I'll do Wikipedia for this. I don't love Wikipedia for most things. But at $52,000 a year, at minimum wage, we are now at the income for state number 42. So Tennessee's average income, median income is $52,375. South Carolina, 52. Oklahoma, 51. Kentucky, 50. Alabama, 49. Louisiana, 47. So a minimum wage increase in Connecticut, the median income is $76,348 in 2018. It will make some difference, but we are planning for that anyway. Most businesses I know are already planning to get there. When the median income, so for example, let's suppose you own a burger shack and you sell your burger for $6, and suddenly you have to go from $11 an hour to $15 an hour. The burger goes to $7 or $8. It's not the end of the world in Connecticut. Why? Because the median income is $76,000. What happens when you go to New Mexico and the median income is $47,000? When people don't have that extra $2 to spend on a burger, when a family of four that costs an extra $12, $13 to go out and eat, you can't do that anymore. What does that do to the restaurants? What does that do to all of those small businesses in Oklahoma, in Kentucky, in Alabama, in Louisiana, in Arkansas, where all of those, the median income is under $50,000? If you have two people at minimum wage in those states, they'll be making more than Tennessee, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Alabama, Louisiana, New Mexico, Arkansas, Mississippi, West Virginia, and Puerto Rico is $20,000. I don't know how that would apply to Puerto Rico. And this is the problem with a national minimum wage at $15 an hour. Now, we can make the argument it hasn't been raised in a long time, but this is a huge, huge raise. You can raise the minimum wage if the average income of the area can afford the new prices. Well, you're raising the minimum wage in many of these states by 50%, from 9 and change to 15. You will destroy small businesses in states that have median incomes that are in that 55 and under range. Destroy them. Connecticut, yes, we have the argument, and Republicans will say you shouldn't do it, destroy business. They adjust. They raise the prices of their things 50 cents. With a median income in the 70s, we can make it work. It doesn't work the same for every state. And the people in these other states don't have the money to afford that extra $10 at dinner or $12 at dinner or whatever it is, because that minimum wage went up, or afford that extra $40, $50 on a grocery bill because the minimum wage on the workers in the grocery store went up. That will force chains in those areas, especially, to go to you're seeing it now, the automated checkouts. Not keep full-time employees as full-time anymore. They will go to part-time. They will cut hours. And you will absolutely decimate and hurt those smaller states. The median income in the state matters. The ability for the customers to absorb that increase. In Connecticut, we can. Here's the top states. Washington, D.C., $85,000. If a burger goes from $12 to $14, no one cares. Maryland, $83,000. If a burger goes from $12 to $14, nobody cares. Family of four goes up $8, who cares? Connecticut, $76,000. You can make it work. Not in every town. We have a huge disparity in income, no question. But in general, as a state, they can make that work. Alaska 74, Washington 74, Virginia 72, Colorado 71. They can absorb that because the people, the customers, will keep going. When you get to a place where the median income is in Maine at $55,000, they're going to hesitate to go out when they see a 10, 12, 15% increase in food costs, in grocery costs, in the cost to go bowling, in the cost to do whatever it is that you have to pay people more to work there. Remember, the federal minimum wage. What is the federal minimum wage rate? Let's look at what is this? Federal wage is right now $7.25 an hour to $15. It's doubling. And so, one, we need far more information on how this would work. But in those states, if the cost of a burger doubles, if the cost of the groceries double to cover that labor cost, and it won't double, but even 20, 25%, it's a significant change. It will significantly impact their economy and those businesses. Now, we like to use numbers and say, well, as a nation, it doesn't matter. In those states, in those economies, it will have a massive impact that we in Connecticut aren't going to see. I know a lot of small business in Connecticut, they've adjusted. They raise up the $1 a year, they make it happen. And if their sandwich goes up by 50 cents, it does. If the labor goes up a little bit, it does. Where it's a little tougher is if you're in manufacturing and you can't raise that price. If you're competing against a state that does not have that minimum wage. That's a different story as well. So I question, one, the logic behind such a large jump on a federal level for the minimum wage. And I also question this. Should we be using the pandemic as an excuse to pass ideological beliefs? Do I believe in raising the minimum wage? Yes. Do I believe we should be using the pandemic to not have the real honest debate that we should be having about that item on its own? No. What I'd like to see is that debate on minimum wage taken out of this and debated as a completely separate bill. Maybe it passes, maybe it doesn't. I have a feeling some Democrats would fight it from southern states. We don't know. But it deserves its own argument. It deserves not to be pushed through as part of emergency pandemic support. And so that's the only issue I have with what Biden put forward on the stimulus package. And that was the first thing that jumped out at me when I first saw it last week. And I didn't get to see it. I was out to dinner, but didn't see his entire speech. But we have to think twice about doing that. The second thing we want to talk about today, what did I have on this agenda? Day one promises from Biden. So what can we expect tomorrow? And there's an article I'm reading on CBS News. The big one is immigration reform. Now, it's amazing. When Obama got to office, he wanted to do immigration. If anybody's read the Obama book, and I'm in the middle of it now, I have not completed it, but the big thing he regrets the most is not passing immigration reform. And before we get into being left versus right, Bush tried to do this as well. Bush tried to do whatever it is to get the people who are already in the country, illegally or not, doesn't matter, a path to citizenship. So one of the first things he's going to do is send a bill to Congress for legislative immigration reform that will modernize our immigration system and give nearly 11 million undocumented immigrants a roadmap to citizenship. Now, Bush tried it. It didn't pass. Obama talked about it, but he was far more focused on healthcare and then got heavily sidetracked on other things. It is refreshing that Biden is leading with this. So we see it be a focus of his administration. I think there is bipartisan support for this. There's always been the people who are already here. There should be a path to citizenship. And by the way, that path includes paying taxes. So I'm going to look at, see if I have what the items are. But it was something along the lines of after 5 years of paying taxes and working, what have you, they can apply for a green card, apply for citizenship, and then 3 years later get it. And that makes a lot of sense. The question is, Do I pass a plan that takes 8 years? What if somebody else gets in office in 4 years and then destroys it? So I'd like to see that process be 4 years so it can actually take place for a lot of these people. But it'd be good to see that be a centerpiece of, and there is significantly significant support from both sides on this. It's way overdue. There's so many people that live in this country that are productive members of society that have not been able to be considered a citizen. And before people think for a second that suddenly votes for Democrats, it really isn't. I know a lot of immigrants who voted Trump, so I don't think they're automatic votes for Democrats. Andrea, I won't use auto checkouts. I typically don't either, unless there's a really long line. But yes, I've heard the argument that using auto checkouts hurts jobs. I agree with that. And I've met you before. I just don't know if I'm pronouncing it. You'll never get the debate, as everything else would be a partisan issue. Is that on the minimum wage? Yeah. I don't think a $15 minimum wage on a federal level makes much sense. And I don't think anyone in Connecticut can fully understand what that would mean in the southern states, what that would mean in states where the median income is in that $50,000 range. It could be devastating to businesses. Connecticut can do it. Connecticut has money. It would be devastating to businesses in the South. No question about it. So I think keeping it part of the stimulus package, I don't think is right. And I don't think it's going to really show us the actual impact. I think if a lot of people understood the impact in those southern states, they would not vote for that. You want to increase it from 725 to 9, 725 to 10 federally? Okay, I get that. But let's look at it this way. If we already know this, the cost of housing is significantly lower elsewhere, right? The cost of energy is significantly lower elsewhere. So the cost of living in general is significantly lower elsewhere. If you're in Connecticut making $50 an hour in a couple of years, you're stupid to stay. Your quality of life, the home you can have, the car you can, all that stuff is drastically increased. Move to North Carolina, move to Alabama, find a decent condo in Alabama. You'll have a much better quality of life, because that minimum wage will go 10 times further. It just will. So does this make sense? I don't think so. I think you'll hurt jobs in those areas, and it'll just be bad for those states. That's why taking a federal thing based on political ideology and putting it into a stimulus package doesn't make sense. It deserves its own argument. It just does. So that being said, there's one final thing I want to talk about today. And this was said today. We've talked a lot last week about Trump and his role in what we saw the Wednesday before. This is a quote. "The mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president and other powerful people. They tried to use fear and violence to stop a specific proceeding of the first branch of the federal government, which they did not like. But we pressed on." Who made that quote? Mitch McConnell today. On the last full day of Trump's presidency, Mitch McConnell, major ass in so many ways, awful on the stimulus packages, massive nemesis to Pelosi, just a pain. That's what he said about Donald Trump's actions 2 weeks ago. If you're a Republican, I'm not telling you not to support Trump. You voted for him. You wanted him. He got in for 4 years. No one's going to take that from him. The hatred of him is overblown. I agree. There's some things. There's a list, I think, of Politico did a really good list of some of his actions. Some of them were very good. That said, to just put a final lid on what we saw, we're going to get impeachment pretty soon. There's no way Trump was not responsible for what we saw. There isn't a way. There is no way to spin it. I hear people saying, well, he didn't show me the quote that says you should attack the Capitol. He made it happen. There is no other president in that seat which that would have happened. There is no other president that would have spent the last 2 months literally just making stuff up, riling up people who were looking for something to be mad about. None. And that's Mitch McConnell. Read it one more time. It's spectacular. The mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president and other powerful people. They tried to use fear and violence to stop a specific proceeding of the first branch of the federal government, which they did not like. The problem is these are people who supported Trump. But these are people who also have respect and honor for who we are as a nation, for that peaceful transfer of power, for the different branches of government. And that when even someone who's supported starts turning the mob against the government, they take a stand. Kudos to Mitch McConnell. And that's something I've rarely said. But in this case, there really shouldn't be any questions left about what this guy did wrong. You can argue if he should be impeached or not, but there really shouldn't be any question left that this president was absolutely responsible for this. Kathy, someone just posted again, who do you blame for the cities burning this summer? Well, let's talk about that when we talk about that. These aren't the same things. They don't relate to each other. You had rallies and you had wrongdoers. You had many, many, many people arrested. You did. This is an attack on the Capitol. We don't compare a riot in Portland to an attack on our government. Those aren't the same things. That seems to be the go-to answer. Well, where were you when? Oh, well, hold on a second. It wasn't that somebody incited a riot. It was that somebody incited an attack on the Capitol. When you attack the Capitol, when you attack the government, that's a very, very different thing. Violence is not violence. No. Or violence in a rally in Portland or in Minnesota is not the same as attacking the Capitol. They're not the same. This is a false equivalency. It's not true. Attacking the Capitol is treason. Marching in the street is maybe that was violent, yes. And many people were arrested. No question about it. Bad things happen. Bad things happen every day. You attack the Capitol. On the day you were going forward with the peaceful transfer of power. That's a very specific purpose, to attack who we are as Americans. There is no comparison between an attack on our government and marching in the street and violence that happened because of that or related to that, or maybe not related to that. We don't know if there are other people or not. They're not the same. Just like, quite frankly, a murder in New York City and shooting the president are not equal. They're not the same. They're both awful, but they're not the same. The one thing we should all stand for, every single one of us as our nation, every single one of us, that America is an idea that's greater than any individual person. Period. And by the way, Black Lives Matter did rally in D.C., and they didn't go into the Capitol building. They didn't do it. It's not an equal comparison. All right, guys, thanks for joining me again. I know we took some time off, but we will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow is a massive day. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat tomorrow, you're an American tomorrow. And that peaceful transfer of power is about who we are as Americans. So tomorrow, don't be a Trump fan or a Biden fan. Yes, people are going to be celebrating. People are going to be mad. But this is an idea. Look through history at how people have taken power by coups and murder. And there's so many cases that power was transferred violently with death. And America is known for not doing that. So no matter who you support tomorrow, tomorrow's America Day. Tomorrow is a day to admire. And if you want, go online tomorrow and Google violent transfers of power. and Google and look at how many disastrous things had to happen for new people to take power in various countries, and look back at what we do. Why Trump's not going to be there, I have no idea, but Pence should be there, and we will see that peaceful transfer of power. That's what we are. There is nothing more American than that. That comes before baseball and apple pie. Let's make tomorrow America Day. On Thursday, we can fight again. But we'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. For the time being, guys, have a great night.